Hello, and welcome to this tutorial on how to add a scheduled or a cron task to your Quart app using Quart-Tasks. My name is Philip Jones, and you can find out more about me at pgjones.dev, including more tutorials like this one at pgjones.dev/tutorials. Okay, so let's get into it. And just before we jump into the code, I'm going to tell you what code we're going to use. And we're going to build or add our cron task to Tozo. Now, Tozo is your classic to-do bookkeeping application with a React front end and a Quart back end. And I'm going to use it because all the code is available here at pgjones.tozo. So this is the one we're going to build upon. And what we're going to build today is a task that runs every day in the morning to send out an email to the users of Tozo telling them which tasks are due today. So that's the idea. So we can imagine it being useful for the users that every day they get reminded these are the tasks you must complete today. So how do we go about doing that? Well, for Tozo, of which you can see the code now here, we're first going to install Quart-Tasks. I should have shown you what Quart-Tasks is. So Quart-Tasks is a Quart extension that provides scheduled background tasks. And it does so via these hopefully quite convenient decorators that either take the cron format form or a basically expanded form, but it also allows periodic tests as well if you want to do that. We're going to focus on cron or scheduled tasks today. So Quart-Tasks can be installed with pip, as you would normally, but because this project uses PDM, I'm actually going to install it with PDM. So that should add it now. And just a note, I'm using Python 3.12. I don't know what that warning is about, but it doesn't matter, it all works. So there we go, I've now installed Quart-Tasks. So I go to the run, and now I'm going to set it up. So the first thing to do is to import Quart-Tasks, as in the, oops, I can't spell, it's in the class from Quart-Tasks, the project, and then initialize it. And I'm going to call the variable version, or the initialized version, tasks. So now we have tasks set up, we can add a task, oops, if I can spell, we can add a task to it. So let me go to the bottom of the file, I'll add it here. So tasks.cron. Now, I said earlier we wanted a cron job that ran every morning. Now, if you're not familiar with cron, or you find reading the cron format quite difficult, which is definitely true of me, I always use this website or something like it. It's called crontrab.guru, which will tell you what it means basically. So I've set up one here, so it runs at 7 AM exactly every day. So this seems perfect for us. So I copy that over, put it in the cron definition. And now I've called the test, and I also call this send reminder emails. Okay, so just stopping there, in some respects we're done. This task will run every morning, and if that's all you wanted to learn from this tutorial, then you don't necessarily have to stay around. However, I'm going to show some useful stuff as well anyway, so you may want to carry on. Okay, so now we have a cron task, this task that will run at 7 AM every morning. So what's the first thing to do? Well, the first thing to do is to fetch from the database all the tasks that are incomplete but due today. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Tozo code base or system, this is the model for the to-do table. It also has a member ID, so we're going to need to do something much like this. So I'll leave that open. And so first things first, let's grab a connection to the database. So we use QuartDB in this project. So I can do async with QuartDB.connection as connection. Sorry about that extra space, let's clear that. Then the first thing to do is to fetch all the raw to-dos, the raw data from the database, which we get from a connection.fetchAll with the query. Now the query is clearly to, I'll just steal this bit here, is to fetch the ID, the complete, due, and we'll also need the member ID from the to-dos, crucially, where the due date is equal to the current date, and complete is false. Okay, that should give us all the to-dos, which is great. Now what we want to do is put those to-dos together per member. And remember, a member may have more than one to-do, like due that day. So I'll call this members to-dos, what I'm going to use is a default dict, so I can key it by the member ID, and then it's going to have a list of the to-dos inside. So I need to import the default dict from collections. Just an aside, the collections module and the tools module are full of really useful things like that. So if you've never looked at them, do take a look. They're really good. Okay, so now I can loop over the raw to-dos. First things first, I want to create an actual to-do instance, which again I need to import as a model. So you can see the to-do has a to-do instance, which I'm going to make use of. So I'll import that here. Backend models to-do. And if you want to know why these models are set up this way and the queries and all that kind of stuff, then please do have a look at the to-do Tozo codebase and the Tozo book, more on which later. But anyway, to create a to-do, I need to pass in the ID, the raw, due, and the task attributes or aspects of it. I can then append that to-do to the members to-dos. So now, every morning when this runs, I have a dictionary of members that were keyed by member ID, for each member having a list of those to-dos that are not complete and due today. So now I have that in place, I can actually start sending the emails. So how do I do that? Well, let's get the member ID and the to-dos from the members to-dos that we've just extracted and grouped together. So first things first, I need to get the member, and the member model has a useful method called select member by ID, pass a connection, and the member ID. So that's the one I'm going to use. So let's import that. Backend models member, select member by ID. I go back down. So the member is await. Did I await it here? I could often forget that. It could be a very easy way to get an error that can. Member ID. So now I have the member. Now I can think about. Oops, it's a syntax error, isn't it? That should be it. Now I can think about sending the email. So there's an example of that in the Tozo repository as well. If I look at the members blueprint, I've already highlighted. You can see this is send email function, which you pass it an email, a subject, the template you're going to use. I'll show that in a minute, and then the context you pass the template. So that's what we want. So I'll copy that over to the run file. Bring it over. Oops. Didn't copy. Let's try that again. Okay. Right. First things first, I need to import this. So this comes from the lib email file. And again, if you would like to know how this works, please do take a look at the Tozo code. But we'll carry on, and we'll say reminder to-dos due today, and I'll call this the reminder template. What we'll pass into it is the list of to-dos, and this is all we need in our task, right? And just to reiterate, we're going to open a connection to the database, fetch the raw to-dos, group them per member, and then per member send them one email with the list of to-dos. So let's write that template. So to do this, I'm going to copy the existing one just to save a bit of time here. I'm going to rename this one reminder. So here it is. And so the welcome can just be hello. And it's in the contents, we'll say you have the following incomplete tasks due today. And all we need to do is loop over the to-dos in the Ginger templating language and output that task. Now let's style this a bit, shall we? So it's an unordered list. That probably makes sense, right? And then each one is a list element. So it'll look a bit nicer for the recipient that way. Let me tap that in so it's a bit easier to read. Okay, so that's it. That will run every morning and send an email to the members. Well, I've said that. We should perhaps test it does what we expect it to do. So let's do that next. So first things first, I'm going to create a new test. I'm going to call it test reminder task. There we go. So my test itself, if I can spell, it's just the same. So let's start filling this out. Well, you might ask, why does it need the app here? Well, because we want this test and the task itself to run in the app setup. And again, this is something you'll need to look in the Tozo code base and the Tozo book. You see here, we set up a test app, so that's why it uses that, even though we won't use this variable within, but we do need it. But that's the hopefully one aside. So now I can go to the Quart-Tasks documentation, and you see to test the task, we simply await this Quart-Tasks test run method and pass it the task name. So first I need to import my instance of the Quart-Tasks class, which I call tasks if you remember. And then what I do is I await tasks, run task, test run, sorry, and then the name of the task. Now the name of the task, you can name it yourself, but by default it's the name of the function. So there we go. So that will have run the task itself. But obviously that will just check it runs without crashing. I need to check that it does the right thing. Now there's an example of that in the Tozo code base as well. You can see what we do is we assert that the captured log has this message saying sending the template to the right address. And this is how it works in testing. Like instead of sending actual emails, it just logs them out and we can then read them. Now caplog is a PyTest fixture that captures all the logging. That's what cap stands for. So the combination of those two is everything we need. So if I bring it in, we just need to assert that we've sent the reminder email to member at Tozo. So you're probably wondering why it's the member address and how this is going to work given we've not created any to-dos that expire today. Well, that's next. So if I go into the migrations, into the data, let me just insert another to-do. So the existing to-do, I'll leave the due date that's null, that's the default. And I'll put in the second one. You see this is where the member email comes from. And this is the reminder task, and this is due now. So due is a date time. When you take the date, it'll be today's date. So that should be everything we need. So let me see if I've made any typos or mistakes throughout. So I'll first format the code. Just tell me if there's any syntax errors. Nope, that's good. Then I'll lint it. Just tell me if I've made any silly typos or anything. This looks good so far. So the next one is to obviously run the tests. I'll just give it a second. So what it's taking a bit of time doing here is it's doing a MyPy check. And just before I started this recording this tutorial, I cleaned the code base so I could start from scratch, and so it doesn't have the MyPy cache, which is what it's taking a bit of time, especially on my laptop, when I'm also recording the screen and probably have Chrome open, etc. Aha! So we do have an issue. And it says here that this member can be none, which is true. However, in this context, we know the member ID does exist, so the best way to tell MyPy of this is to say that we will assert the member is not none. Okay, so let's run the linting again. This time around it should pass completely. Excellent. Now we can run the tests. Sorry. So what the test is going to do is create a blank database for us, run our test, and we can see it's passed straight away, which is excellent. So how can we make this a little bit more useful? Well, I said at the start, we want it to run every morning at 7 AM, but that really depends on the time zone you're in. right? Because my 7 a.m. where I am is obviously not yours. So the best way to specify this is to use the zone tzinfo argument to Quart-Tasks, then pass it the zone info. And for me, that's Europe. I can spell London, because that's where I'm based. So you get the zone info from the standard library zone info module. There we go. Now, you obviously want to change this to wherever your app is primarily based. But if you have, let's say, members in many countries, what you probably want to do is make this task run every hour and then select the members that are in the right time zone for it, or something like that. Okay, so that's one improvement. Another improvement, well, if you're familiar with QuartDB or you're familiar with the Tozo codebase, probably wondering why I've grabbed a connection from QuartDB rather than using a more common G.dot connection. Well, the answer is that QuartDB adds this before request that puts a connection on G.dot connection, then afterwards tears it down, which is really convenient. But it can't do it for Quart-Tasks because QuartDB doesn't know that you're using Quart-Tasks. But we can add this because Quart-Tasks has a before task and an after task feature. So let me show you that. So if I add a before task, that's tasks, oops. I call that async def setup db connection. Probably would have made more sense as a name. For that, I'll just call it setup. And what we do here is we do g.connection await db.acquire. Now, got to import g. So we just import that. So that's the setup. So the cleanup and the after task is as follows. Just type and spell. And I've just copied that from QuartDB to save you typing it all out. What you can see is it will try and see if the connection exists on G. If so, it will release it and then just set it to none. So nothing else can use it. What that allows us to do is simplify this code and also crucially make it a bit more familiar. In that now we can just use G.connection here, and we can use G.connection there. And just to show it works, I'll run the tests again. You should see it does work. Oh no, okay, I'll check in a second why it hasn't worked. Ah, it's because I've been very lazy and I've just wrote self. QuartDB.release. So let me cancel those because I know what it is. I'll reformat, I'll relink just to check I haven't made any other silly typos. Nope. And finally, I'll run the tests. So, and you can see now it's run. So what have we learned today? Well, hopefully, I've demonstrated how you can very easily, in fact, with one line, add a cron task or a scheduled task to your Quart app. And this can do whatever you want. We've done an example whereby it sends people emails about their reminding them about to-dos that are due today. But yours can do whatever you want. And yeah, this is simply by adding the Quart-Tasks extension. I also meant to tell you about zone info, you probably know about that. So this is where you can find out a bit more details about that. And finally, I'd say if you like this and you want to learn more about Tozo and you like the way I explain things, please do take a look at the book that accompanies Tozo, which is called A Blueprint for Production-Ready Web Applications. It's available from Pact, and you can buy it here. But otherwise, I hope this was useful, and I'll speak again soon.